Welcome everyone. Our webinar topic for today is the science you need to know about anti-aging cosmeceuticals. I'm thrilled to introduce to all of you our distinguished speaker, Dr. Leslie Baumann. Dr. Baumann MD is a board-certified dermatologist, researcher, and the author of 2 popular dermatology textbooks. Her Skin Type Solutions Skin Typing System, first described in a New York Times best-selling book, is included in many medical textbooks and is the gold standard that doctors use for scientific skincare regimen design. She independently tests skincare products from multiple brands to evaluate efficacy. You can find her popular column called Cosmeceutical Critique in the monthly Dermatology News publication. Dr. Baumann's passion is empowering others to understand skincare science so they can scientifically customize skincare regimens for themselves, their patients, and their clients. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items for today's webinar. You will have the option to submit your questions throughout our presentation. To send us a question, please use the chat box, type your question, and submit to organizers only. After the presentation, we will have 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A session. This webinar will be recorded, and we will be sending out the link for those of you who would like to watch later or share it with a colleague. So let's get it started. I'll turn it over to Dr. Leslie.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad you could join me today. This is my favorite lecture. I've actually been traveling around the country lecturing at different dermatology meetings for the last 7 weeks, and a lot of people in the audience wanted to see more, so that's why I'm doing this webinar. But I have to say, it sure is easier than getting on an airplane, so I'm going to start doing more of these every month because it's a great way to keep everybody educated. And so let us know. In the end, we're going to send you a survey, an email. Let us know what topics would interest you. So as we're going along today, if there's something that you wish I would talk more about, just scribble it down, and then you can send us an email later when you get the survey. Okay, I'm going to be talking about anti-aging skincare, and my financial disclosure is I'm the CEO of a company called Skin Type Solutions that makes software that generates regimens. It's not a skincare brand. It works with over 40 brands. So I will be talking a little bit about different brands today, but I want to make sure you know that I'm not affiliated with the brands in any way, and I independently test the products to see if we're going to include them in the software or not. Okay, first of all, whenever you're deciding on a regimen, I believe you need to divide people into 16 skin types and figure out what their skin type is before you make a regimen. And by the way, we're going to start out kind of slowly, and then we're going to build, and then the science is going to get complicated. There's lots of different people on the webinar, all different levels of science, so I'm going to kind of start at the beginning and build, and by the end it will get really complicated. So again, feel free to scribble down any questions you have, and you can email me. I'll be giving you my email at the end. Now, when you do a skincare regimen, you really do need to think about the skin type and customize the regimen for that skin type. There are 4 main issues that affect skin health, and my skin typing system is based on these 4 main issues, which are dehydration, inflammation, pigmentation, and aging. So today we're going to be talking about aging. And skin that is prone to aging is usually exposed to poor lifestyle habits like smoking, tanning, poor diet, stress, lack of sleep, not using sunscreen. And then anyone over 30 really needs to be on anti-aging skincare products. If you have any of these poor lifestyle habits and you're under 30, you also should be on anti-aging skincare products. So the purpose of today is to help you understand the claims of the skincare products, all the anti-aging technologies, and understand the science so that you'll be empowered to make great decisions for yourself and your patients about skincare. So first, let's talk about genetics. I don't know if you guys remember that Lab 31 company where I think they were in malls and you'd go and for $300 they would swab the inside of your cheek and tell you what your genetic disorders were and make a cream for your issues. Well, unfortunately, we can't do that. We don't know enough about that, so that was kind of a scam. And you'll hear more and more companies talking about their products trying to solve the genetic problems that your skin has. But the truth is we don't know a lot about the genes involved in skin aging. The best paper I've seen so far is from Alexa Kimball at Harvard, who does really great research, and she compared people who had average skin, which is the green line here, or people who looked like they were younger than they were, which is the pink line, or people who were older. And she looked at the genetic expression. So she's not only looking at age, but she's looking at older people who look younger to see what's different about their genes than other people's. And basically, this is what she found. And here's the little color key here you see. So you can see that the people who are younger, that pink color, their genes seem to be functioning better in the areas that have to do with epidermal energy metabolism, the structure of the epidermis, the barrier of the epidermis, and the structure of the dermis. And she even looked at different genes that are involved in those areas, and you see all of the people who looked younger than they were had different genetic expressions in these areas. So we know these areas are important. But again, we're just getting a glimpse at what genes might be important. So don't waste your time buying any of those products that say they target genes. So we're going to talk about the two main cells in the skin, the keratinocytes and the fibroblasts. And I like to make little characters to make the talk more fun because the science can get complicated. So sometimes I'll use these little characters. The keratinocyte's the little guy on the left, and the fibroblast is the pink factory on the right. So first, let's talk about the keratinocytes and what they are and where are they. They're in the epidermis, which is the top layer of the skin. And if you look up close, they look like a brick wall, and they protect the outer part of your skin. And they hold on to each other with these little attachments. And there's a lot of science about those little attachments. And you can see each layer of them, they're a little bit different. The first layer is the stem cells in the basal cell layer. The second layer is the spiny layer where they have little spines where they hold on very tight to each other. The third layer is the granular layer where you see these little dots, and those granules are little factories making all kinds of important things. And then the cells start to die and flatten out, and they make the top layer of the epidermis. So this is the epidermis made of keratinocytes. Fibroblasts are lower down in the dermis. So you peel the top epidermis off and you see these fibroblasts. And the fibroblasts kind of move around. They're not as stationary as the keratinocytes are. And they make important components. That's why I like to call them factories. So they make hyaluronic acid, collagen, elastin, and heparin sulfate. And many other things too, but these are the most important things that we know about right now with aging. So the hyaluronic acid is these little blue ladders because they're little strands of sugars that hold on to each other. Collagen's a triple helix. Elastin's like a spring. It gives your skin its elasticity. And heparin sulfate is a sugar. We're going to talk more about it later. So aging causes decreased function of both of these cell types. So with the keratinocytes, you're going to see their stem cell function isn't as good. It doesn't make as many baby cells. And the skin barrier is not as good. It's not making all those same barrier components. That granular layer gets lazy. It doesn't make as much stuff as it's supposed to. Then on your fibroblasts, you see less collagen production, less hyaluronic acid production, and less heparin sulfate production. Now, somebody out there might think, well, she forgot to say elastin. I didn't say elastin on purpose because you can't make more elastic tissue after you go through puberty. So whenever products are telling you or companies are telling you that their products improve elasticity of the skin, that is not possible. I might do a whole lecture on that. I'm working on a paper on elasticity to try to explain that better. But basically, it's more complicated for the cells to make elastin than it is for them to make collagen. And we really can't prod them to make more elastin. So it's important that people hold on to their elastic tissue by protecting their skin because you just aren't going to get it back with any of the technologies that are available right now. So what happens is these old cells get lazy and they're unresponsive to all these cellular signals. I'm going to show you those again. Those little balls are growth factors, and that key is a receptor getting turned on, and these signals just are ignored by these old cells. So why does skin look old? Well, if you look at the top, that's a younger two-dimensional drawing of the skin, and then the lower one is an older skin. And you can see the little triple helix brown things that are collagen. You have a lot less in the lower, older picture. You have less of the blue hyaluronic acid. You have less of those purple springs. So basically, older skin has less of everything. And also, you have these reedy ridges, these little undulations at the bottom of the brick wall, the keratinocytes. That starts to flatten out. You lose that. And then you'll learn later that there's a lot of junk that builds up in this extracellular matrix, a lot of garbage that causes a problem. So damage to all these areas is really what leads to aging, and we're going to go through that. So that damage can be caused by light. Yes, I just found out that blue light is aging, and so you need to wear a sunscreen that protects you from your phone and lights in your office and your computer screen. All kinds of light now we're learning age you. Radiation, like sunlight, for sure, we've known for years. Free radicals, we'll talk about that. That ages you. Glycation, inflammation, and disruption of apoptosis. So let's go through each one of those. So DNA damage, what is that? So what happens is ultraviolet light comes in. Well, let me start over. On the left is your triple helix of your DNA strand. You've got one green strand and one pink strand. And what happens is when ultraviolet light comes in and touches these strands, it causes a bond between these two, the nucleic acids that are next to each other, and they bind to each other and form thymine dimers. And as you can see from the drawing, thymine dimers mess up the whole structure of DNA and make it not work properly. It can't make RNA. So this is a mutation, and this is what leads to skin cancer and aging and other things. So all of that is caused by ultraviolet light. So you can prevent that by avoiding the sun, wearing sunscreen, and using antioxidants. So preventing it is very important. That's why we're always telling patients every day to wear their sunscreen. Now, another thing that happens is in between the cells, you get a lot of garbage. So whether we're talking about keratinocytes or fibroblasts, all around those cells, you get a lot of garbage. Inside the cells is a garbage disposal called a lysosome. And that lysosome gets lazy when the cell gets old, and it just doesn't degrade all the garbage as well. There's something called lipofuscin, which is garbage that's actually visible under a microscope, and they used to use it to age cells and figure out how old the skin was. Now we have more high-tech ways to do it. And there's also protein fragments. There's little pieces of elastin and collagen that gets all built up around the cells, and there's something called advanced glycation end products that we're going to talk about a lot. So all that junk builds up because the garbage disposal isn't working very well on these old cells. Then you have apoptosis. So apoptosis is also called programmed cell death. And you want the cells to die so that new ones can be born and renewed. And what cancer is when apoptosis quits happening and these cells start dividing and they just don't die. So apoptosis, they're learning more and more about it. And it happens because on the surface of the skin, you'll have an eat me signal that happens. And basically this happens whenever there's something called phosphatidylserine. And when phosphatidylserine moves from the inside of the membrane to the outside of the membrane, it does this eat me signal. And then the immune system, the phagocytes, phago means eat, so the phagocytes come and they eat these old cells and kill them. And that's how the cells kill themselves, is by telling the immune system through phosphatidylserine. The reason I make a big deal about phosphatidylserine is you'll see it in skincare products, but it actually doesn't do anything to the skin in a skincare product because it's not the presence of phosphatidylserine that's important in apoptosis. It's the fact that it's moving from an inner membrane to an outer membrane and sending a signal. So there's no reason for you to look for phosphatidylserine on a cosmeceutical label. That's kind of pushing the science a little bit when you see that on the label. So that's why I wanted you to learn about that. Now, free radicals, we hear about them a lot, and people talk about them a lot, and they talk about antioxidants a lot, but a lot of times people don't know what free radicals are. Free radicals are an oxygen with an unpaired electron. So oxygen likes to have 8 electrons. And when something happens, like ultraviolet light usually, it'll come and it'll knock away an electron. And then the oxygen doesn't have an even number anymore. And that blue one, which I'm pointing to with the orange arrow, that blue one gets all mad because it wants a partner. So it starts stealing partners from other things. It'll steal the electrons from DNA, from cell membranes, from lipids, or from different organelles, and causes damage. So what we want to do is we want to prevent this from happening, because free radicals are really a problem and very damaging. And one of the things that they damage are mitochondria. So mitochondria are very important. They are the engines of your cell. They make the gasoline, or the power, the energy that drives everything else. And they have this inner membrane where the blue is, and they have this outer membrane where the pink is, and those are both very important. And mitochondria have their own DNA, mitochondrial DNA, which comes from the mother, and it also can get damaged by sun and free radicals, just like regular DNA can. But the problem is when mitochondrial DNA gets damaged, then these enzymes don't work properly, and you don't make enough energy. And energy in a cell is called ATP. So you need ATP to have energy to do all these other processes. I mean, how is the cell going to make collagen and hyaluronic acid if it doesn't have enough ATP? So ATP is very important, and the mitochondria is key. So we know that antioxidants can prevent free radicals from causing damage. What they do is they give oxygen, that electron that it wants. So antioxidants can help protect the mitochondria. One of my favorite ones to protect the mitochondria is called coenzyme Q10. And the reason is because not only is it an antioxidant, but it actually is a component of the mitochondrial respiratory chain that's along this blue membrane here. So coenzyme Q10 actually gives cells a boost of energy. And that's why if you take coenzyme Q10 supplements, you want to do it in the daytime, because it has this caffeine-like effect, and that's because it's boosting your ATP production. Another way to prevent mitochondrial damage is with sunscreen, but it's important for you to know there is no way to treat mitochondrial damage once it occurs. There is a lot of research in this area because a lot of degenerative brain diseases have mitochondrial damage. And someday, hopefully, they will be able to solve it. But right now, no matter what it says on the packaging, labels, or the company's claims, you can't treat damaged mitochondria. So then the other thing that causes aging is something called glycation. And you've experienced glycation every day. It's actually the other name for it's called the Maillard reaction. And it's very important in cooking. These are onions, and I'm browning and caramelizing the onions, and that color change is the Maillard reaction, which is also called glycation. And it's when heat changes a sugar and makes sugar bind onto something. And not only does it change the smell and the flavor, but it actually can cause problems in the skin. So the reason it causes problems in the skin is because of sugar. So sugar is not your skin's friend at all. So what happens is when you have, when you have glycation, the sugars hold on to these collagen triple helix, and that makes the collagen stiff and it doesn't work properly. And so that is one of the main reasons skin ages, is this sugar bound to collagen. Now, the reason that it matters so much about collagen and elastin and the glycation that occurs is because collagen and elastin are very long-lived in the skin. They'll be there for years and years and years. So they have a lot of time for that sugar to bind to them and cause problems. So studies show that they have a very high accumulation of advanced glycation in products. And they're not easily eliminated. So when you end up with these clumped up elastin and collagen fibers holding onto sugar in the skin, that just gets in the way and makes skin act older. And we know that sun exposure can cause these. There's one that's called CML, and CML accumulates on the elastic fibers, and it's been proven that this happens with exposure of reactive oxygen species, which is another name for free radicals. So free radicals cause the CML to accumulate on the elastic fibers, so we have a mechanism for why you lose elasticity with sun exposure. It's through this process. So would free radicals help this and prevent this? Would antioxidants help us and prevent this? Well, they should. They should. So how are we going to treat and prevent glycation? Well, antioxidants are the mainstay, both orally and topically. And sure, it's important to get them in your diet, but if you eat a lot in your diet, you don't always get the highest levels in your skin that you need because your skin is constantly exposed to ultraviolet radiation. And that's why we tell you to use antioxidants orally and topically. Of course, sunscreen every day. Dietary intervention by eating less sugar will help. And then there are studies to show that metformin, which is a diabetes drug, which lowers your blood sugar levels, can help prevent aging. Now, I'm very interested in metformin, and I could actually do a whole lecture on metformin. There are reasons to take it for anti-aging, and there's other reasons not to take it for anti-aging, so it's actually a very big story that I don't have time to get into. So let me know if you want to learn more about that. So inflammation is also a cause of aging, and there are many different causes of inflammation. And it's pretty complicated to go into all the causes and the pathways of inflammation. So I like to just call it inflaman. So when inflaman gets turned on by whatever the multitude of reasons are, causes lots of problems. And whenever it happens, it's a domino effect. And this domino effect of inflammation turns on all these other inflammatory pathways. And that's why if you've ever gotten a rash or an allergic reaction, then all of a sudden you notice you start reacting to all these other things and things bother you that didn't used to bother you. That's because these inflammatory pathways get turned on and they are not easy to turn off. So blocking inflammation is important. And so inflaman, we don't want inflaman turned on. We want him turned off. And these are all the ingredients that can help turn inflaman off. And you'll see these in lots of different products. Now, these can be organic, natural versions as well. People are always asking me, what do you like better, organic products and natural products or chemical products? And, you know, it really has to do with the ingredient because there's not a natural form of all the ingredients we're going to be talking about today. But whenever there is a natural form, then, of course, I would prefer organic. So, for example, argan oil is a wonderful anti-inflammatory. I really like it. It has linoleic acid in it, which is anti-inflammatory, and there are organic versions of that. So now let's talk about what technologies are out there to try to reverse aging. We talked about what causes aging. Now let's talk about how do we reverse it. Once skin has wrinkles, what do we do? And there's all kinds of anti-aging ingredients. You hear about them from the reps all the time. And if you look at a skincare regimen, this is the AM and PM regimen with the different steps. I like to put the anti-aging products in this step 3, which I call the treatment product step, because that's when the skin is clean and it's easiest for it to penetrate. I like to put it on top of the eye cream to protect the eye area because that your skin is thin. So sometimes these anti-aging products are too strong for the eye area. So that's why I put an eye product and then I put the treatment product. Then I layer a moisturizer over it to help push it into the skin because penetration is an issue. And then in the morning, I'll follow with sunscreen. At night, I'll follow with a retinoid. And the reason I put the retinoid on last is because when you're first starting out a retinoid in a skincare regimen, the retinoids penetrate really easily and can cause redness and flaking. So by putting it on top of the moisturizer and the treatment product, a little bit less gets in and you can titrate it and make it stronger. And later you can move the retinoid to a different part of the regimen. But I wanted you to kind of visualize what we're talking about here whenever we're talking about these anti-aging products and where they go in the regimen. I have a whole lecture on regimen design and how to decide what step the product goes in the regimen. And this is how the Skin Type Solutions software works. It actually generates a regimen based on the steps and all the science of how the ingredients react with each other. So what are we trying to do with these anti-aging products? Well, we're trying to stimulate these keratinocytes and these fibroblasts and turn them on because remember, they were old and lazy. So one way to do it is with retinoids. And retinoids are my favorite because they have so much data and they've been proven over and over again. And basically, retinoids have been proven to turn off the production of bad things and turn on the production of good things. So they turn off collagenase, which is an enzyme that breaks down collagen, and they turn off the production of matrix metalloproteinases or MMPs, and those are different proteinases that break down lots of stuff. So it turns off the breakdown of good things, and it turns on the production of good things. So it turns on the genes that make you make more collagen and more hyaluronic acid. And retinoids are not anything new. They've been around since the 70s, but we just have more and more data about how important they are. And I'm always shocked at how few doctors recommend retinoids, because I think the reason is getting used to them in the beginning is kind of a hassle, and you get a lot of calls to your office. So getting used to a retinoid is hard because you need to use a very small amount every third night on top of a moisturizer, and you have to use it with the proper cleansers and moisturizers so that you don't get irritated. But if you train your patients and your clients to use retinoids properly, they're going to see a big difference. And I'm going to show you a picture that I show all my patients to try to tell them to use retinoids. And I've been a dermatologist now since 1997, so I have patients who've been on retinoids for 22 years, and they look so much better than they even did 22 years ago. It absolutely prevents aging. I believe I can beat any resurfacing laser with retinoids. So if you're not using retinoids, you really should reconsider it. This is the paper that led to the FDA approval of Renova, which it was Retin A, and they renamed it Renova, for photo-age skin. And you can see this paper was 1988 in JAMA. And here is a picture of a patient that used 26 months of tretinoin, which is Renova or Retin A, and that was all she used. This was prior to Photoshop, before we had lasers. You can see she's peely, and you can see that she didn't use it on her eyelids because that wasn't part of the study, so what a difference. But these are the kind of results you'll see, but it is not quick. Your patients need to be on it for 6 months, a year, and they'll slowly start seeing a difference. So the longer they're on it, the better it is. The study on the right is a study done by Se-Wong Kang whenever he was at University of Michigan, and they looked at non-sun exposed areas. So I love this study because they took 80-year-old people and they put the retinol, which is a over-the-counter non-prescription version. They put retinol in their underarm, not their underarms, but the bottom part of their upper arm, that saggy part that people complain about. They put the retinol there, and they showed that it would tighten the skin in these non-sun exposed areas. So we know that retinoids work on both photo-damaged skin and skin that is intrinsically aged, that's aged not because of the sun. Now, people always ask me, well, what about retinol? It's over the counter. It's not as strong as prescription, right? Well, it turns out that retinol is as strong as prescription, and this is because it penetrates really well. And we know that tretinoin and all the other retinoids turn into retinol in the skin, actually. And retinol does penetrate really well, but the esters don't. So you don't want to use products that have retinol palmitate and retinol linoleate and anything that ends in ate, because that means it's an ester. And you can see from this paper that esters do not penetrate the skin very well. And this is why the companies will tell you, well, our retinol is not irritating. It doesn't scale. It's for sensitive skin. Well, if a retinol is not irritating, it means it doesn't work. Because right now, the way retinoids function is when they turn on all those genes, they also turn on some inflammatory factors. There is one exception to this with a product that was developed out of University of Michigan that blocks this, but it's really not on the market yet. So you haven't been exposed to that yet. But in general, if the retinoid doesn't irritate the skin, it's not working. Now, once you get used to it, then it will work. Okay, so let's see. So hydroxy acids, what do they do? Hydroxy acids are another thing that's been around for a long time. And Dr. Dietrich and Eugene Van Scott were dermatologists who did the early work on this. This paper is 1996. And there are many, many studies to show that hydroxy acids stimulate fibroblasts. They make them make collagen. The paper on the right shows that it turns on collagen production. There's evidence of the mRNA that happens. And so we know for a fact that hydroxy acids turn on those fibroblasts. It's just they're kind of old news, so people don't talk about it much anymore. But I like to include them in a cleanser. I like to put a hydroxy acid cleanser in the regimen, and then that way they're getting the low pH of the hydroxy acids and a lot of the benefits. Ascorbic acid is vitamin C. You see a lot of different vitamin C products. And there is a lot of wonderful data on vitamin C, originally done by Sheldon Pennell, who was the chairman of dermatology at Duke. And they've shown that if you take fibroblasts in a cell culture and you put vitamin C in there, those fibroblasts will make more collagen. And this has been proven again and again and again. And the reason it works is because when you make that triple helix, that collagen triple helix that was brown in my pictures, you need vitamin C to make that helix. So whenever you give the cells more vitamin C, they're able to make more collagen. Now, growth factors, there are many different growth factors. There's over 300 different ones, and I like to say that they function like a football team. So there's many different ones, but on their own, they don't work as well together as they do as a group. So in other words, if all you had was a quarterback and you didn't have a receiver and a linebacker, you're not going to do as well. That's how growth factors are. There's epidermal-derived and dermal-derived growth factors, and they all kind of act differently depending on which ones are there. But right now we're going to focus on the cells. And the cells don't hear these growth factors when they get older. Those cells get old and lazy, but they just also don't hear the signals. So how do you make the old cells listen to these growth factor signals? Well, one way is with heparan sulfate, which is a glycosaminoglycan or a sugar. And heparan sulfate, I like to think of it as a security guard, because what it does is it takes these growth factors and it puts them right on the receptor where they need to go. Because when the growth factors can break down and not make it to their target, and if the cells aren't listening well, it doesn't really work. So heparan sulfate holds on to these growth factors and puts it right on their target, and that helps it work better. And so basically it helps cells hear the signals better. So in summary, how are you going to stimulate keratinocytes and fibroblasts? Well, you can do it by wounding people with a peel or a laser. You could do it with exfoliation, with hydroxy acids, retinoids, mechanical exfoliation. You can stimulate stem cells. All of those things will stimulate these cells. But there's different strategies too. What about activating the stem cells? Instead of trying to turn on these old cells, what if we could get stem cells to make new baby cells, and then all the cells would be younger? So that's one strategy that's based on the LGR6 plus stem cell. And these stem cells live in the hair follicle. So this is the hair follicle. That yellow thing is the sebaceous gland that makes the oil on the skin. And right below that sebaceous gland is a cluster of stem cells called LGR6+. And these stem cells get turned on when you get wounded. So whenever wounding happens, these stem cells get turned on and they make new cells to fill in that hole. And this occurs because the immune system, the neutrophils, get activated, and they come there and they release something called defensins. And defensins bind those LGR6+ stem cells, turn them on, and make these new cells. So it turns out that defensin can be applied topically in a cream, and here it comes, and it binds those stem cells, and then it causes new cells to fill up that epidermis. So this gives you new keratinocytes that act younger. Now, another new strategy you'll be hearing about is cleaning out the extracellular matrix. So the extracellular matrix are these round purple circles in between all the collagen and the hyaluronic acid. And that's just kind of in the past thought to be an area where everything else kind of floats around. But what happens is all these elastic fibers that had sugar bound to them and they got damaged by the sun and they're all clumped up, and all those old broken clumped up collagens and all those advanced glycation end products are just all in there, and they're just taking up that space so the cells can't float around and do what they need to do. So the strategy is to try to clean out this extracellular matrix. One way that people have been talking about for a long time is with turmeric or curcumin. It's so hard to say. And some studies show that they've decreased that lipofuscin, which is the junk that builds up in the cells that you can see under a microscope. So we know that that is one of the few ways that you can get rid of some of that lipofuscin in the cells. But the problem is these products smell bad and they have a yellow color, so they're not very easy to formulate. So hopefully they'll come up with other things. A lot of people are taking this in their diet, which is another good idea of a way to kind of clean that junk out of the cells. But another way is using different peptides. So there is something called a matrikine, and like matrix, like extracellular matrix is where that word comes from, and kine comes from talks to, like a cytokine talks to cells, a matrikine talks to the matrix. So matrikines are these peptides that come from fragmentation of proteins. So when the proteins get all broken up by different kinds of damage, those broken up proteins talk and give these signals. And so that's why they're called matrikines, because they're giving these signals. And two that you'll be hearing about in the cosmeceutical world are tripeptide and hexapeptide. And tripeptide has been shown to go in and help remove that damaged collagen and elastin and the extracellular matrix components and clean all that out. Normally it's used in wound healing procedures like prior to laser or prior to peels, so that it helps clean that area out. You're supposed to use it for at least 2 weeks prior to the procedure. I actually have a whole talk on pre and post procedure skincare, and this is one of the things that we talk about, the tripeptide. Another thing you want to do is improve DNA repair, and one way is putting DNA repair enzymes in the products, and there are many different ones you'll hear about. What happens is when DNA, if you see on the left, you see that little blue and that little orange peg, those are supposed to be pink, but what happens is sun exposure or other damage makes those mutate, so you don't want those blue and orange ones in the DNA. So the DNA unwinds, takes those out, and puts new ones in, so the bottom is repaired. So DNA repair enzymes are the enzymes that unwind the DNA and then go and replace the new nucleotides and then wind the DNA back. All of that takes energy, and niacinamide is an ingredient that gives cells energy. It's in that NADH cascade that you learned about in high school. So niacinamide gives the cells the energy to repair themselves, and so does coenzyme Q10. Remember, coenzyme Q10 works in the mitochondria and helps you make more ATP, and ATP is the energy that's needed to repair the DNA. Free radicals, you want to prevent those. Remember, we talked about how oxygen, when it loses an electron, it becomes a free radical. So we want to prevent that, and we do it by wearing sunscreen or anti-inflammatories will prevent free radicals. But also, if we give the antioxidant the enzyme it lost back, then that'll solve the problem. So that's why antioxidants are important. You use up your electrons really quickly, and that's why you need so many different kinds of antioxidants. When you go in the sun, you use up all your body's natural antioxidants in about 10 minutes. So you really need to have extra antioxidants in the body to help protect the skin. So if we look at the regimen structure, I hope you understand now why you want to treat aging and where the aging products go. But it's important to remember that these products all interact with each other. So I like to think about it with colors. If you take one product, which in this case is the yellow, and another product, which is the blue, and you put them on the skin, it's actually a third product that acts differently. And this can affect the activity, the penetration, the solubility, the stability, and the efficacy. I have a whole talk about this and how they interact. So you really need to know your anti-aging products and know what order to put them in the regimen and which ones work well together. And designing an efficacious regimen takes time because you've got to think about each one of these layers and what products go there. And every product in the regimen should improve the efficacy of the other products. So you want to make sure that if you're adding a retinoid, that it's making the other products work better, not worse. And there's a lot of different things to know, and you have to tell the patients what to do, what not to do. You have to think about the chemical reactions. And this is my thing. I love this. So I'm going to be giving you more and more webinars to help answer your questions and help you understand this. I developed software to do this for me because I don't have, even though I know a lot about this, when I'm there with my patient, it's hard to think through all of this on the spot. So I have software that thinks through all of this and generates a regimen. So you pick what brand you want to sell from over 40 different brands, and then that pops into the regimen. So basically the patients take a quiz on a mobile app. It identifies their skin type, and then a regimen is generated, and then they can refill their products online, and they have their regimen right there in their mobile app, And whenever you change the regimen, when they come back and see you, then it pops back in the mobile app. And it's a great way to help them be educated and be compliant so that they know what they're supposed to do. And every step in my practice, I've thought through how to educate the patient so they get educated about these things before they even see me online, when they call the front desk, and each step through the office we have educational material, because you can give your patients the best anti-aging products in the world, but if they don't use them, they're not going to work. So part of this is motivating and engaging the patients, communicating and educating the patients to get them to be compliant. And the goal is, of course, to have the healthiest skin. So if we can work together to understand the science and educate our patients about the true science, not the made-up marketing science, then we can all work together to improve skin health. Now, the way it works with my software is I independently test the products, and each one has to meet certain specifications, knowing what products are going to come before and after it. So they have to have certain ingredients. They can't have other ingredients. So we call that STS approved whenever the products meets these specific requirements. And then once they do, they're in the brand. They're in the regimen. So if you want to keep learning, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of educational material. On Instagram, Skin Type Solutions is more for consumers. It's less sciencey. LinkedIn is going to be more sciencey. I invite you to follow us on either one of those things, whatever interests you. And if you want to know more, this is an email you can get me. You can text Manny, who works with me, or you can even set up a call to talk to us at stsfranchise.com/meet, and we'll tell you more. And when you get your email about the survey, please tell me what other topics interest you and if you liked this format. Okay, thank you. I love it that we got so many questions and we couldn't answer them all today. We're going to go through them all, and then we'll come up with other webinars. My goal is to do it once a month. Have a wonderful week, and thank you, everyone, for attending. Bye-bye.